Good evening and welcome to the 2007 Foxboro JC's Candidates Night. The JCs are proud to present this annual forum so that you, the voters in Foxboro, have an opportunity to meet the candidates running for office and hear their views on the issues that surround the positions that they are seeking. My name is Julie Grant. I am a proud member of the Foxboro JCs and your moderator for this evening's event. On behalf of the JCs, I would like to commend all of these individuals who have stepped forward and made the commitment to serve the community through an elected office. One of the lines in the JC Creed states that service to humanity is the best work of life, and we applaud you for offering your talents and especially your time to serve Foxboro. One of the tasks I have as moderator is to ensure that things run smoothly and that everyone follows the rules. First, let me state for the record that the Foxboro JCs as an organization cannot and will not endorse any particular candidate, nor can we espouse a particular political point of view. This is specifically prohibited in our chapter bylaws. However, since one of the strengths of the JCs is to provide leadership training, it should come as no surprise that many of our members are currently serving the community on a variety of town boards. Any actions or views expressed by those individuals are the views of those individual citizens and do not reflect the views of the Foxboro JCs as an organization. As for the rules for tonight's event, each candidate will be allowed to start with a brief introductory statement that shall not exceed 3 minutes. The school committee and selectmen candidates will then be asked a series of questions from our panel of local journalists. The order in which the candidates speak and in which the panelists ask the questions was determined earlier tonight by a random drawing. Candidates will have 2 minutes to answer each of the questions, after which the reporter may ask a follow-up question. If a follow-up question is asked, the candidate will have 1 minute to answer the follow-up question. Immediately after the question and answer period for a group, the candidates will have 2 minutes to make closing remarks. Candidates will be warned off camera when they have reached the halfway point of their allotted time. Before we get started, I would also like to thank Mike Weber and the crew here at Foxboro Cable Access for their assistance in bringing this production to you. The staff and volunteers here are working hard behind the scenes to deliver this broadcast to you, and we could not make this happen without their expertise. There are 15 candidates for 13 seats on this year's ballot. 10 of these candidates are running without opposition. We open tonight with statements from 2 incumbents for school committee, each unopposed in seeking another 3-year term. First, a word from incumbent candidate Martha Slattery, who has joined us here in the studio. Martha?
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Martha Slattery. I would like to thank the Foxboro JCs and the Foxboro Cable Access for the opportunity to address the Foxboro voters. I am seeking re-election to the Foxboro School Committee for another 3 years. During the past year, I think the committee has made significant changes in the following areas. We now have a strategic plan in place, and we are finishing up on the district improvement plan. We also have passed a curriculum cycle that will help us to update curriculum on an ongoing basis. We have changed the budget process and presentation. Last year, we returned approximately $500,000 to the town's general fund in hopes of offsetting CIP items and not taking money away from the town's or the school's working budgets for this year. We now allow questions and community input during agenda items at all of our meetings. We rebroadcast, with the help of cable access, our meetings for the convenience of the entire community. We are reviewing and revising our policy handbook. We recently searched for and appointed a new superintendent. Having sat on both sides of the table, I have a healthy respect for those who come in or call us and want to be heard. I also realize that sometimes we disappoint some of you along the way. Tough decisions have to be made, and I listen to your concerns and base my vote on all the information we gather in order to do what is right and in the best interest of all our students. I have a high regard for everyone who works in our school system. Each and every one of you contributes to the academic growth and well-being of all our students. Our special needs program should be second to none, and all of our students should be challenged to achieve and be prepared for life after high school. Our music program is superior and needs to be maintained. Our extracurricular activities and sports programs rise above and beyond expectations and do so without user fees, unlike many other towns. This town supports education, and that is something all of us can be proud of. I will continue to be aware of the budget restraints and work collaboratively with the town. I support public education and have a vested interest in this educational system. I was one of 6 children who attended our schools. My 5 children and 5 nephews have all graduated from Foxboro High School, and now 4 of my 7 grandchildren are attending schools here. I learned a long time ago that if we could turn all the negatives into positives and work together, we can accomplish more that will greatly impact the children in the system. It's time to move this school system forward and stop dwelling on the past. I am looking forward to working with our new superintendent and bringing our schools to a higher level of excellence and achievement. We have the opportunity to move from good to great with this exceptional leader. Thank you for your continued support.
Thank you, Martha Slattery.
You're welcome.
Incumbent Katie Adair is unable to be here tonight, but visited the studio earlier to prepare this statement.
Good evening. I want to thank the Foxboro JCs and Cable Access for the opportunity to speak with you tonight. I also want to thank you, the viewers at home, for taking the time to watch this program. It has been an honor serving on the Foxboro School Committee for the past year. I've enjoyed visiting schools, meeting and working with the dedicated and hardworking administrators, staff, and students. It has been a pleasure getting to know many parents and citizens, many who have contacted me with a concern or question about the Foxboro School District. I am running for re-election for a 3-year term. I am proud of the many accomplishments of the school committee in the past year. I understand the responsibility and trust placed upon me by the citizens of Foxboro, and I will continue to represent you and the students in this community while being fiscally responsible. There have been many changes made within the school district this year. One of these changes is the budget process. A new monthly budget reporting system was instituted, which allows for improved fiscal management of the school budget. The FY08 budget requests were presented to the school committee by building principals and department heads. This process has provided the opportunity for open dialogue and discussion around setting budget priorities. In our budget, we have reduced certain positions while adding and restoring others, including special education teachers, math and English specialists, guidance, music, and librarian positions. As you may remember, last spring, the school committee returned a surplus of nearly $500,000 to the town. We also identified and utilized revolving accounts. We approved and purchased a new English language arts program for students in grades K through 6 from the surplus. In the fall, there were changes to our administration. With collaboration and teamwork, there was a smooth transition. The school committee adopted the strategic plan. When MCAS were presented, the school committee pressed for extensive discussion and focus to scrutinize how we as a district can increase our students' performances. The school committee adopted a curriculum cycle, which included a math review this year. We must continue to ensure we are meeting the state frameworks within each subject. We expect and want our children to be successful learners and move on to higher education. Last fall, the public had the opportunity to tour our schools. Foxboro High School is in need of future renovations, and we are prioritizing our school building needs. The committee will meet with the planning board to discuss how increased housing may impact Foxboro Public Schools. These are examples of how future planning is at the forefront of our committee. This year, the school committee responded to a long-standing issue of alcohol and drug usage in our community. We discussed this at our school committee meetings and met jointly with the selectmen to initiate and organize a drug and alcohol forum held on March 29th. This, however, is the first step. We need to continue an open dialogue, engage in ongoing planning, and follow through with implementation of vital programs in the community and in our schools to educate our youth on wellness issues. The school committee has identified outdated school policies. As a result, we have scheduled special school committee meetings to review and update our policy manual, which will continue throughout the summer. This year, I participated in collective bargaining. I served on the Superintendent Evaluation Subcommittee. I also served on the Superintendent Search Committee. On April 5th, the school committee interviewed and hired our new superintendent, Dr. Chris Martis. I've enjoyed being on the school committee. I ask for your support and your vote on Monday, May 7th, to continue to serve the Foxboro School District, the community, and our students, working together towards ensuring all of our students' success. Thank you.
Okay, stand by, Katie.
Thank you both for your continuing efforts as members of the school committee and for taking the time to address the voters. After a short break for some important election information, we will return with candidates in 2 contested races for seats on the Board of Selectmen. Okay.
Okay, stand by, Julie. 3.
Welcome back to the 2007 Foxboro JC's Candidates Night. We have been joined by the 2 candidates running for a 2-year term for selectmen and by 2 local newspaper journalists. Each candidate will be allowed to start with a brief introductory statement that shall not exceed 3 minutes, and will then be asked a series of questions by our local journalists. The order in which the candidates speak and in which the panelists ask the questions was determined earlier tonight by a random drawing. Candidates will have 2 minutes to answer each of the questions, after which the reporter may ask a follow-up question. If a follow-up question is asked, the candidate will have 1 minute to answer the follow-up question. Immediately after the question and answer period, each candidate will have 2 minutes to make closing remarks. At this time, I would like to introduce the journalists on our panel. We have representatives here from 2 of our local newspapers. On my left are Heather McCarran of the Country Gazette and Stephen Peterson of the Foxboro Reporter. Thank you both for agreeing to participate. On my right are Neil Forrester and Jim Thrasher, candidates for a 2-year term as selectmen. This is a balance of the term to which Bert Delaney had been elected, a post from which he resigned in order to take up his current job position as an administrator in the Foxboro Public Schools. Mr. Forrester, you are our first speaker.
Thanks. I appreciate the opportunity to speak tonight. I'm, as you said, running for the 2-year unfinished term of Bert Delaney. I've lived in Foxboro for about 49 years, married a little longer than that. During that time, I've raised 2 children, totally products of the Foxboro school system, and graduated from high school. I have also been most recently a member of the Zoning Board of Appeals, serving as an alternate, and as of September on the committee that reviewed the impact statement of the Patriots, and last, the negotiating team itself, negotiating with the Patriots, and I believe the mitigation part of that was successfully concluded about a week ago. Water and sewer remains to be seen, but I expect that to be the same. I have been a member of the Federal Bar and Massachusetts Bar for about 34 years in good standing. Back in the 70s, prior to running first time for Board of Selectmen, I was a founder of a high-tech company, so-called, in Marlboro, Data Translation. You can see the details of that on my website. It went public in 1986. After that, before being appointed to the, being elected to the Board of Selectmen, I was serving on the Board of Human Services. I was on the committee that was appointed by the then board to set up the community center for seniors and the youth, and operate it. My position was as legal advisor to the group and advising pro bono seniors. I served on the area board of the Department of Mental Health. I served on the Medfield State Hospital Ethics Commission, Foxboro Charitable Days, which channeled money from Foxboro charitable events to local organizations, and so on. And when on the board, I think Most notably, there were two events I can point to, two ties on a three-man board, three-person board, pardon me. Harriet was a member then. The first cable company was to come into town, and there were two contenders. After talking to citizens of the town, and principally Jack Ortholet, whom I very much respect, I decided for Warner Cable on the basis of cable access for the community, which was new at the time, and will be next year again. Another very important factor, the Comcast negotiations come up. The other was to settle a tie to allow the first Monday night football game for the Patriots, and that was the only game I've ever attended at that stadium. But it was for the benefit of those football fans in town. I felt I owed it to them to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Thrasher, you next.
Thank you, Julie. Good evening. My name is Jim Thrasher. I want to thank the Foxboro JCs for holding this event and Foxboro Cable Access for broadcasting it. I grew up in Foxboro, graduated from Foxboro High School, Holy Cross, and Suffolk Law. I live at 12 Catherine Road with my wife Margaret and our 4 children. I practice law in Mansfield. Tonight, I come before you as a candidate for re-election to the Foxboro Board of Selectmen. I take pride in my record of public service, and I look forward to discussing it tonight. I am an independent candidate for re-election. I am beholden to no special interest. No other elected official makes calls on my behalf or solicits you for lawn advertising. You, the voter, are the only person I answer to. 2 years ago, you elected me to this office after I promised to work hard, ask questions, encourage commercial development, and make decisions in the best interests of our town. When you called me with a question or made a recommendation, I listened and responded. For 2 years, I have worked hard for you, and sure enough, our commercial tax base is growing. I told you I would pay attention to the needs of our seniors. For a year of Monday mornings, I delivered Meals on Wheels at Carland and Court. Last summer, I sent a proposal to Senator Timilty on my idea to hold down property taxes for seniors. Though the state wheels turn slowly, I'm optimistic that my idea will come to fruition. History is the best predictor of future performance. I ask that you judge the history of my work and predict my future performance. Shortly after I took office, I worked with Selectman Bob Hickey to perform an exhaustive review of Town Council, something that hadn't been done in 20 years. The full board ratified our work and enacted our recommendations. My next special assignment was working with Selectman Mike Stanton on the Children's Advocacy Center. Once again, the full board accepted and acted on our recommendations. In 2006, Selectman Delaney and I formed the original Patriot Place Committee. When Bert left, I carried on alone, interviewed the departments, kept the minutes, identified the issues, and wrote the report that recommended Selectman Mark Sullivan to chair a comprehensive review committee, and that formed the basis of our subsequent efforts to minimize the consequences and maximize the benefits of that project. When I look back over the 2 years, I see how much we have accomplished together, and I am proud to have been a part of it. Julie?
Thank you. We are now ready to begin our first round of questions. Ms. McCarran, our first question, with Jim Thrasher to respond, followed by Neil Forster.
Okay. What do you think are the greatest challenges facing the board, and what can the board do to address them?
The greatest challenge...
Facing the town, I should say.
Well, the greatest challenge facing us immediately is the culmination of our ongoing negotiations with the developer of Patriot Place over mitigation that was agreed to by the negotiating committee, and negotiations that are currently taking place between the Patriots and the Board of Water and Sewer Commissioners. We also have the major development going on at Chestnut Green, bringing in commercial and a number of new residential persons to Foxboro. We face the ongoing oversight over the public service building. I think the transition of the police department and the fire department into the new public safety building and the renovation of Town Hall are important issues on our horizons. We also have a number of capital items that the school department has talked about, especially regarding Foxboro High School. the Water and Sewer Commission and the ongoing attempts to get increased sewage flow, especially to the downtown, remains a major concern in Foxboro.
Okay, Mr. Forster?
Well, I agree. I think the one challenge is to conclude, and that to me it's not an election issue, is to conclude these negotiations with the Patriots. Hopefully water and sewer will finish up very soon, and to see those carried out into town. I think the other issue alluded to earlier by me is that in November of next year, we face Comcast coming back in to negotiate. And I think the only items to be negotiated are terms of cable access, not fee schedules or anything else. We also have Verizon popping up to attempt to perform the same function, and they wish to totally remove it from town control. And may I report, however, that according to Jay Barrows, that legislation may not perhaps be successfully carried through. So in the sense that I'm concerned about cable access, that has to be very carefully studied and taken care of next year. I want to protect everything that we have here, everything it stands for, in terms of the number of channels, in the financing, and the facilities. That's the second issue. And I think from town issues, those are the two most important that I see.
Okay. Would you like to ask a follow-up question? Okay. Mr. Peterson?
What would be your top priority if elected?
Is it my turn, or do we pass over?
Oh, I'm sorry. No, it is Mr. Forster.
Sorry. Well, first of all, it's a personal priority, which is I sit on the Zoning Board of Appeals, which is an excellent board. And if I'm elected to selectman, I have to immediately find a replacement for myself. And because Barney Overett, who's been writing over a long period of time those excellent decisions, we've had Dave Brown go off the board, Barney almost threatening to leave, in the sense that he's overloaded, I think has been. We need people who can write decisions for him. I've helped do that in the past few months, that seem to have him, with the other support, feel supported to go forward, stay on the board. I think that's very important. That's a personal goal for me. And it means not necessarily an attorney, but somebody who can help write decisions for Barney. That's, and the other priority I've stated earlier this week, apart from the major ones, is to look to see how the tax benefits to seniors, principally in the senior center, that 100-hour program for mitigating real estate taxes, can be expanded meaningfully. And hopefully my background long-term in the corporate world will help me do that.
Mr. Thrasher?
Yes, I believe the top priority is to grow commercial revenue. We have seen a tilt away from our reliance on residential taxes, however slight, toward commercial taxes. I believe that that's the future of Foxboro. The more economic growth we can encourage in commercial areas, the greater our commercial tax revenue and the less burden we place on our residential taxpayers. From that flow many good things, hopefully some money that we can devote. I think we have to devote more money to our road system. It's not enough simply to spend the allocated state money on our roads. We're not spending enough money on our roads. We have to prepare for capital projects in the future and maintain the line on residential taxes now.
Thank you. Would you like a follow-up question?
All set.
Okay. Ms. McLaren, our last question for these gentlemen, please. It'll be Mr. Thrasher first.
Would you support a general override to meet the town's financial needs?
I do not support a Proposition 2.5 override to fund operating expenses. I said that 2 years ago. I've said it for 2 years, and I say it again tonight. If we must pay for recurring expenses with recurring tax income, we cannot override for operating expenses. There are certain capital projects that do get my support for 2.5 overrides. They're few and far between. I did support a 2.5 override to bond the public safety building. It was overdue. It was something that we had to do. I do not see a project at this time that I could support a 2.5 override for, and I will stand by that as long as I can. Capital projects only, not for operating expenses.
Mr. Forster?
Well, I agree. I think the board has done a great job in recent years of holding to that fact that expenses stay within the operating expenses stay within the budget. Although we seem to reach the 2.5 levy limit in the preceding few years, hopefully we can look forward to some tax revenue coming in from the stadium that will take us back to a point in time about 8 or 9 years ago when we could possibly reduce taxes. I think the the thing we may be asked to do is a debt exclusion, which is in essence an override, but limited only to the duration of the bonding expense, and it will disappear once that expense is completed. May be called upon for water and sewer in a small amount. That I would probably vote for, because the tax burden, as I know Jim knows too, would be about $30 or $40 on top of the regular taxpayers' normal bill. And even though I would not benefit from it, I would, in any way, I would vote because I think it's necessary. This whole issue of relying more on commercial taxation is a very important one. We used to have the Foxboro company in prior years that contributed mainly. That has gone way down, and I think the stadium development that mall will help to reduce reliance on residential taxation.
Thank you. Would you like to ask a follow-up?
Yeah. So then, would you support splitting the tax rate?
Not immediately. I don't think that that would be really constructive at this time, because you want to encourage business to grow that taxation. I think the increased taxation will flow and help, and at some further point in time, maybe 4 or 5 years from now, it may seem logical to then split it. But immediately, the next 3 or 4 years, I don't think so.
That question comes up every year. I have consistently voted for the same tax rate for residences and businesses. I envision a day when Route 1 is completely built out commercially. I also understand that there are certain percentages that are at play in this tilt of tax valuation of commercial and residential properties. I do envision a day in Foxboro where it may be appropriate to change the tax rate and charge more for commercial enterprises. I don't think we're there yet. I just wanted to point out one thing as well. There is a movement, especially via the city of Boston, to prevail upon the legislature to allow local communities to tax for meals, and I think that's something that if the Patriot Place project does come forward and we have a number of restaurants up there, it's something that we may want to look at and lobby our legislators to support that legislation to allow additional tax revenue on these businesses in Foxboro.
Thank you. To close out this segment, we'll have a few words by each candidate. Mr. Jim Thrasher, closing comments?
My goal as your selectman is to provide honest, reasoned representation. I respond promptly to questions from residents and businesses. I encourage your comments. I think for myself, take responsibility for my decisions, and I'm always open to explaining them to you. Over the next few years, we will transition both police and fire into the public safety building, experience the influx of new residences and businesses at Chestnut Green, and weather the impacts of Patriot Place. Our list of capital needs continues to grow, and we face decisions on funding town hall renovations and school improvements. Now that the downtown road project is all but complete, we must work to make the center a vibrant district. I do want to do something about the sign clutter downtown instead of shrugging it off as a state question. Let's put our heads together, determine exactly what the law requires, and remove the redundant signs. Commercial development remains a priority. Let's continue the trend away from our reliance on residential taxes and toward commercial properties. Developers should explain the true impact of their projects so that we recover appropriate mitigation. Foxboro has to do more than use allotted state funds for road repairs. State funds are simply not enough. I am confident that the growth in the commercial tax base will alleviate some tax pressure on our seniors, allow us to spend more on our roads, and address the needs of our municipal departments. I want to express my thanks and gratitude to my family and friends and the hundreds of people who've helped me out and endorsed my re-election. I am humbled by your faith in my commitment to this town. Finally, I want to continue to work for you, the citizens of Foxboro, and to do that, I ask for your vote on May 7th. I promise in return that Foxboro will get the best I have to offer.
Thank you. Mr. Neil Forsyth.
Well, you've heard my qualifications earlier. I would ask anyone who is interested in voting this year and who wants to look further to look at my website, www.voteforster.com. It has all the things that I mentioned tonight, plus more, and you can look up the old Foxboro Reporter clippings. Having said that, the thing of which I am most proud and stands as testimony, perhaps, for work in town is that my daughter recently, as a graduate of Foxboro High Schools and higher education, now working at the Berklee College of Music in Boston, running the Department of Students, was asked to be the citizen co-chair on the recent search committee for school superintendent. And of course, schools are very important to me. I think they did, as you will find from referring to the Foxboro Reporter today, that they did a very fine job. They brought in someone who is a former Foxboro graduate, and my grandchildren about to embark in those schools. That's very important to me. In the question of Patriots negotiation, look, the website that's linked by the town to all the minutes of every meeting that took place since September, all the documentation by the town, the COF report, the police and fire presentations on a website that I put up initially. My philosophy is everything is up there to be examined and a paper trail made. And finally, in dealing with that mitigation, I want to support the fire and police departments of this town in as much as we've mitigated for them, and we have created new positions and carefully, as we financially can, set those up in the town for everyone's safety, both youth, senior citizens, and all those young mothers, of course, who have children in daycare. And I thank you for your time tonight, and I hope my talents as sorry.
Thank you.
Cut off.
Thank you both for your commitment to this challenging role and for participating in our forum tonight. After a short break, we will be joined by the three candidates who seek 3-year terms on the Board of Selectmen.
I'd like to introduce the very talented Mr. Livingston Taylor.
Lovely introduction. Well, Chip, Livingston's doing a little shuffle here in A major. Seems to be going pretty smoothly. Now, he's scheduled to go to the 4 chord, but after what happened at the Nationals in Mansfield, you got to think he's not going to risk it here today. Aching arms and dusty boots and a job that won't get done. 2 weeks' pay spent yesterday and a 3-change bus ride home. So I wrote the song, and then I thought, well, I'm a pretty good guitar player, but I want a better guitar player than me on this. But I do know somebody who plays a better guitar than me. One of the best guitar players I've ever heard. And he happens to be my older brother. Promised my lawyer I wouldn't be drinking. It's called Walk Until It's Heaven, where the river is winding, big nuggets they're finding. North to Alaska, go north the bus is on. And dear Annabelle, so fair, with her auburn flowing hair. Well, I'm in a pickle, I ain't got a nickel, stuck in the middle and I'm running away. She even liked my mama and my no-good friends.
Welcome back to the 2007 Foxboro JC's Candidates Night broadcast. We have been joined by the 3 candidates who will compete to fill 2 available seats, each for a full 3-year term on the Board of Selectmen. As in our last segment, each candidate will be allowed a brief introductory statement, and then we will turn to our journalists for some questions. On my right are our candidates. We thank them for coming out tonight so that the voters have the opportunity to meet them. We begin with Mr. Paul Feeney on the end. Mr. Feeney, you have up to 3 minutes to introduce yourself. Please begin when you are ready.
Thank you, Julie. And thank you very much to the Foxboro JCs for hosting this event, as well as the volunteers of Foxboro Cable Access for volunteering to produce this event. Also, thank you at home for tuning in and getting to know a little bit about each of us. My name is Paul Feeney. I live at 182 North Street with my wife, Laura. I'm currently employed as a central office technician for the telephone company where I started in 1997 as a driver and warehouse work on the overnight shift. In 2004, I was a volunteer on Jim Timilty's campaign for state senate. As you all know, Jim won that election pretty handily in November of that year. I was humbled when, after the election, Senator Timilty asked me to serve as his chief of staff. I took a leave of absence in January of 2005 and went to the State House with Senator Timilty to serve the Bristol, Norfolk District, including the people of Foxboro. It was while working in the State Senate that I was able to work with veterans organizations to increase benefits, not only for those returning home from active duty now, but for those who have served our country in the past. I was also proud to advocate for persons with disabilities to increase access to government buildings, including the State House. As a Senate staffer on the Municipalities and Regional Government Committee, I worked with dozens of the 351 cities and towns throughout the Commonwealth to identify some innovative solutions to really complex issues, many of which we find ourselves facing today in Foxboro. My wife Laura and I decided a couple of months ago that I would run for this seat. Since that decision, I have knocked on hundreds of doors, and we have dropped literature and called thousands of voters throughout the town. The question I'm asked so frequently is, Paul, why are you running for this seat? What would make you want to run for selectman in the town of Foxboro? And I've thought about that a lot. I've tried to craft the perfect political answer and think about what our message would be as we're out campaigning. Over the last couple of months, it's dawned on me. There is no perfect political answer. There's no message to craft. The message is clear, and it doesn't come from anyone at this table. It comes from you at home. You have made it clear that there is a need for passionate, experienced representation at Town Hall, free of ethical conflict, that votes for your interests. You demanded it, you deserve it. I am not beholden to any business interest or organization in town. If elected, I will answer only to the people of Foxboro. You're allowed to vote for 2 people for a 3-year term on the Board of Selectmen on May 7th. I ask for your vote, and thank you for your support so far.
Thank you, Mr. Feeney. Next up is Mr. Michael Stanton, an incumbent candidate for the board.
Thank you, Julie. And thank you to the Foxboro JCs for hosting this event and to the Foxboro Cable Access for producing tonight's program. I'm Mike Stanton, and I'm running for my second term as your selectman here in Foxboro because I'd like to continue serving our town. I'm proud of the work we've accomplished in the last 3 years. We've applied conservative budgeting practices which have resulted in a town budget we can afford and has resulted in an excellent bond rating. I want to see us continue to have fair and equitable allocation and distribution of our town's resources. We've implemented a successful corporate model of government and have transitioned to a strong town manager concept and, for the most part, a 5-member board of selectmen. While I'm proud of these accomplishments over the last 3 years, we need to keep delivering new efficiencies to the taxpayer and maximizing existing resources. We need to continue to expand our commercial tax base through appropriate development on Route 1 and in other areas of our town while maintaining our hometown character. Much work still needs to be done on our roads, which is a sore spot for me. It's critical that we stretch every dollar we have to make sure that we don't fall behind on any vital town service for our citizens. We need to maintain our cooperative relationship with the school department. We look forward to the opportunity to implement a new town-wide accounting and information system for improved efficiency in all our operations. And I look forward to discussing all these issues here with you tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stanton. Our third candidate is Ms. Linda Walsh. Ms. Walsh, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Julie. Thank you, fellow JCs, for coordinating this event, and Foxboro Cable for giving us all the opportunity to introduce ourselves to our neighbors here in Foxboro. I am running for one of the 2 seats available for the 3-year term, and I applaud all the candidates who have taken time and energy to campaign for the upcoming election. I look forward to working with any of the successful winners. I grew up in Foxboro. I went to the Borough School. I was one of the first classes there. I went to the Ahern School and graduated from Foxboro High in 1979. I married in 1983, and after living in Norton for a short period of time, returned home to Foxboro, and I currently reside at Pond Avenue with my mom. I do not work for the town or have any affiliation with local businesses. I am currently employed by Next Generation Printing in Canton. I am an account manager for the Inventus account, also known as the Foxboro Company. I still get poked at because I call it the company. A lot of you townies out there will probably agree with me that no matter what name changes come along, we still go by its original name, the donut kettle, etc. So, although I do not have any children of my own, I am concerned for our younger members of the community. I actually consider my friends' children my extended family, and of course I want the best for all of them. The school committee is doing a great job at overseeing all aspects of our children's learning experiences. And I'm very happy to see that one of our natives have come home to take on the superintendent's job, and wish him all the best. I'm just a hard-working, compassionate person who believes in giving back to the town that's given so much to me. I have a deep love for this town and have shown this through a long history of community involvement and volunteerism. It's these experiences and lessons I've learned along the way that have prepared me for my next phase in community service. And I would like to serve as your selectman because I believe that as a selectman, there are greater opportunities to work with the residents and accomplish more for our town.
Thank you, Linda. We are now ready to begin our first round of questions. Mr. Peterson, you may pose the first question for the candidates, please.
What would be your top priority if elected?
Who's going first?
That would be Mr. Stanton, please.
Thank you. The continuation of our conservative budgeting practices. I think if you look at Foxboro in comparison to the 15 surrounding towns, well, let's say the Hockomock League, we're a beacon of financial stability. We've lived within our means. Does it show in certain areas? Absolutely. That's an overriding factor I'd like to see continue again to take advantage of the slide again. Our commercial property values are starting to appreciate, and you're starting to see some relief on the residents. So going in that vein, I mean, again, working towards not taxing to the Proposition 2.5 levy. And the senior citizens or anyone on a fixed income is scared to death. Every time we talk about a debt exclusion or anything else, they're petrified. It's really tough, and we're mindful of that. I guess, you know, the other thing is going to be keeping an eye on the conclusion of these negotiations with the Patriots, and see how that goes forward at these proposed town meetings. But again, just keeping a lid on the budget, living within our means, and, you know, hopefully again, roads and some of these other neglected issues, focus on that going forward. Thank you.
Would you like to follow up on that?
Oh,
Okay. Mr. Feeney, please.
Thank you for the question. I think one of my top priorities has been shared by a few of the candidates that sat here previous to me. Expanding our commercial tax base. You know, it's very important. As I've knocked on doors throughout the town, I've heard from many young families, from seniors, from just hardworking people that, you know, their shoulders are tired. They're shouldering the burden of a lot of the expenses here in town. And I think it's important to expand that commercial tax base to industries that don't drain our local resources. You know, our town sells itself. We're ideally located. Our infrastructure is ideal. We need to aggressively go out and market ourselves to some cutting-edge industries. I think the life sciences community is looking for some nice places to go within the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and that means hundreds of jobs coming to our town. Yet we're not out there actively advocating for those industries to come here. So I think sometimes we allow ourselves to sit back and wait for developers to come into town, and then we're faced with some tough negotiations for mitigation to try and keep up with some of the resources that are needed to sustain that growth. But I think if we come up with a comprehensive plan, and as a selectman I'll do that, I'm an advocate for sitting down with a citizens committee and really hearing from the town on what type of industry we want to see here in Foxboro, going out, reaching for it, advocating for it, and bringing it home to Foxboro.
Thank you. Ms. Walsh?
Obviously, I agree. The commercial growth is very important for our town, and right now we're in the process of dealing with our #1 problem, which is the water and wastewater problem that we have. And I think that once that is settled and the town people have spoken of what they want to see done, we can get more commercial to come into our town and be a part of it. So I think it's very important that we kind of see what happens of the outfall of the several different opportunities that we have out there, and hopefully it will be for the best of the town and more appealing to commercial development to come in.
Thank you. Any follow-up questions at this time? Mr. Peterson? Okay. Heather McCarran, your question will go to Ms. Walsh first, Mr. Feeney, and then Mr. Stanton.
Okay. A common theme seems to be among all the candidates is expansion of the commercial tax base. Would you support tax increment financing as one means of encouraging more development in town? If you're not familiar with that, that's tax breaks offered to developers to come into a town.
That's a tough one, actually, Heather. I'm not going to sit up here and say that I understand that totally, but I would assume that right now we as a town, I don't think, can afford to do that. I think we have to encourage them other ways that make them want to come into the town, other than giving them tax breaks. I think that the single tax rate for all should stay as long as we can keep it that way.
Okay.
It's a great question, and I'm conflicted with that oftentimes because I'm not a big fan of corporate tax breaks. However, I think in circumstances where you're talking about local businesses or trying to revive industry in town, I think TIFs, the tax increment financing, is a great tool that should be looked at. Do I support TIFs if it's the right situation? And I think any situation that comes our way, we need to look at, we need to deliberate, we have to have honest discussion on the Board of Selectmen, as well as go out into the town and really see how the residents feel. You know, I'm an advocate of bringing the Board of Selectmen meetings out into the different neighborhoods on different days to go out and speak with some of the different residents in neighborhoods throughout town, some that maybe work nights and can't attend on regular scheduled Tuesday nights, or maybe some that need to come on the weekends, going out and really talking to them. And I think that's a great avenue to start the discussion about TIFs. As I said before, it is a priority of mine to bring business into town. If TIFs are the way to do it, and sometimes they are, then I will support those.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Stanton?
As far as TIFs goes, it would have to be an extraordinarily great deal for the town. Our town has been approached for different TIFs, in which case we have declined. And if you had a situation where General Dynamics wanted to bring 1,000 jobs into some of the vacant Foxboro company space on the Ponset Street, I think I would have to sit in, and with, you know, good paying jobs, you absolutely have to be prepared to sit down and make that analysis and weigh the, you know, the maximum societal gain. However, I think any of the, in general, some of the TIFs we've seen were lacking, and really would have been a disservice to the existing companies who pay their taxes, who are good corporate citizens, and, you know, do a lot of volunteer and other work. So again, they have their place, but it has to be an extraordinarily great deal for the town, and that would be the type of example that I would certainly perk up and pursue.
Thank you. And to wrap up our questions, Mr. Peterson this time, for Mr. Feeney, Mr. Stanton, and Ms. Walsh.
Which town department would you like to see get a higher priority with the budget?
Mr. Feeney?
I'm sorry, did you say higher priority? Is that the question? Okay, that's a somewhat of a difficult question. I think over the past few years we've seen all our town departments really tighten their belts. I know it's been said by some folks that they didn't feel that was happening throughout town, but in dealing with the different professionals in each department in town, I know they're feeling the pinch just like a lot of us are at home, and a lot of businesses are. So as far as priority goes, you know, I think it's got to be an open discussion. Obviously, each department head is going to advocate fully for their department, which they should. That's what they're there to do. One of the things I'm extremely concerned about is the welfare of our public safety departments, our police and our fire departments. You know, I sat on the Comprehensive Patriot Place Review Committee at the end of last year, and we started to examine some of the circumstances surrounding this new development on Route 1. But one of the things that was brought up to us was the amazing shortage that we have of public safety professionals in this town. That puts my family, that puts your family, that puts our children at risk. That's a dire need that we need to address. Now, some of it's going to be addressed in this mitigation negotiations that are going on with the Patriot Place developer and other developers that are going to come to town. But that's going to be independent of what we do as a town to really kind of beef up their budget to make sure that they have the tools in the police and the fire department to protect us and our families.
Thank you. Mr. Stanton?
I don't believe that any one town department has a priority over any other town department. We've had these discussions with the schools in the past. We're trying to, as I spoke to earlier, get a fair and equitable distribution of the town's resources. The priorities fluctuate. Right now, obviously, police and fire are in the forefront with the development out on Route 1. You know, this town could never be accused of a lack of commitment to our public schools. You know, our funding is generally 70% of the revenues after overhead. So again, we're one town, and the way I look at it certainly is that, hey, we're all equal. They all have legitimate functions, and that you have to take it on a needs base, and that every department, when they're coming in, certainly in front of advisory, they've got to make the case. And they've got to justify. I mean, if I had my way, there'd be an explanatory text for every line item of every budget of every department in this town. Tremendous amount of work. Maybe I'll see it in my lifetime. But again, as far as priority, I'm not picking favorites here. We're one town. If there's a department that's in dire need, we address it, and they're all equally important. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Walsh?
I obviously don't have enough experience to say for sure who needs it. All I know is that I too sat on the Patriots Review Committee, and I was shocked to know that our town could have safety issues because of the understaffed. So I would say that I would look at that first and make sure that we're all set with that before adding any extra to any other department. However, I think that they all have needs, and the advisory committee so far has kept us, everybody happy where they are. Not ecstatic, obviously, but I think that we have to listen to the advisory committee and take their recommendations after everybody has given their presentation. So.
Okay, thank you all. We will close this segment by giving each candidate 2 minutes to offer closing remarks. Let us begin on the far right with Mr. Feeney.
Thank you, Julie. And I did want to bring up before we ended tonight's discussion that I neglected during our discussion about priorities to mention one of my big priorities if I'm elected selectman. And, you know, there's a reason why I wear this red, white, and blue pin tonight. We have over a couple of dozen people fighting overseas right now from Foxboro that are fighting for this country. And as a selectman, I want to work with the Veterans Agent to bring those people home, to welcome them home to Foxboro, to recognize them in our selectmen's meeting. It's a nice little, somewhat easy thing to do to bring them into the selectmen's meeting and recognize them. So that's another main priority of mine. This election takes place during a time of great trepidation and uncertainty here in Foxboro. You deserve a selectman that is open to the ideas of others and independent in his or her approach to all issues. I'm excited to have the support of former Selectman Bert Delaney in this race. Selectman Delaney truly was the people's selectman. Bert fought and continues to fight on a daily basis for every man, woman, and child in Foxboro. I will continue that work. I will continue that fight. On May 7th, you will be asked to vote for 2 people for a 3-year term on the Foxboro Board of Selectmen. My name is Paul Feeney, and I ask for one of your votes, but more importantly, your trust to serve as your next selectman. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Stanton?
Thank you. Foxboro is a well-run community. We have all the advantages, access to highway, commuter rail, and an adequate water supply. We need to continue to maximize these resources to be able to afford the services we want for our town. As your selectman, I know I can make a difference for you. I'll work to maintain vital services as we grow our town's business base. I believe in balanced growth for our town and in preserving our hometown character. The most important quality in the next selectman is to elect someone who can proactively make these things happen for our town. I believe I'm this type of selectman, and I ask for your support on Monday, May 7th. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Linda Walsh, your closing statement, please.
Important issues will be voted upon during the upcoming town meeting. There is also a potential for a special town meeting in the works. I can't state strongly enough how important it is that everyone come out to the polls on May 7th to vote. and to attend the town meeting on the 15th. You should feel comfortable voicing your opinion on town issues. You are a taxpayer and a resident of the town. The elected officials work for you, and your input needs to be heard. I'm asking for one of your 2 votes for a 3-year term as selectman May 7th, and look forward to working with you and for you to ensure that the town's future will be one that has been carefully planned out, a future that will enable us to keep the character of our town and still welcome in commercial development where it belongs. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for your comments tonight and for your willingness to take on the responsibilities of this important role on the Board of Selectmen. Again, voters will choose 2 of these 3 people to sit for 3 years on the board. This brings our program to a close. I want to thank our candidates for taking the time out of their busy schedules to participate in tonight's broadcast. I also want to thank our media panelists, Heather McCarran of the Country Gazette and Stephen Peterson of the Foxboro Reporter, for their help in highlighting the local issues. Thank you also to my fellow JCs who assisted me in this event, Lauren Batar, Kathy Brady, and Monica Rigamonti. Thanks again to all the crew and staff at Foxboro Cable Access for assisting the JCs with this program tonight. Citizens of Foxboro are fortunate to have both the facilities and the skilled and dedicated group that delivers quality community programming. Cable viewers in Foxboro are asked to look for and respond to the Foxboro Cable Television Advisory Committee's survey of local residents, a vital part of the cable license review process. This survey can be completed on paper or online via a link on the Foxboro Public School website. Lastly, I would like to thank our viewers for taking an active interest in the upcoming election by viewing this program. It is our hope that the information in this broadcast has enabled and encouraged you to make an informed decision at the polls on May 7th. As a reminder, election polls are located at the John J. Ahern Middle School on Mechanic Street from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Please vote on May 7th. On behalf of the Foxboro JCs, I'm Julie Grant. Good night, good luck, and thank you for watching.
Thank you.